The end of the season is upon us, and the drama is just starting to build. There were some key battles going down with BCS ramifications, and there were a couple of surprises. We'll let our field reporter, Glenn Albert, take us through the week. 11 scores. Take it away, Glenn.
Week 11 in the Program Fantasy Football League is in the books. Here's a rundown of the scores. San Diego State is BCS eligible after taking down the Colorado Buffaloes 42-33. The Aztecs will make the BCS tournament for the fourth straight season. The Tulane Green Wave shocked California 49-46 at Berkeley, which puts the Golden Bears' number 2 ranking in jeopardy going into the final 2 weeks of the season. Tulane's Drake May dueled his Cal counterpart Justin Fields, which made Tulane BCS eligible for the first time since 2022 when the Wave went to the Rose Bowl. California dropped to 8-3 with the loss, and Tulane improved to 7-4 with the big win. It was Oregon surviving Texas by a final of 35-33 at Autzen, and the Ducks staved off elimination once again. The Ducks are now 5-6 on the season with Ohio State next week and Fresno State to finish the regular season. These are 2 very doable games for Oregon, who has suddenly made a case for BCS eligibility. Program Director A.J. Nardi has taken the Ducks from an 0-15 team in 2023 to league relevance in his 3rd season, and he stands a good chance of making the Ducks a legitimate upset threat in the championship series again in 2025. The Georgia Bulldogs rolled over Fresno State by a final score of 54-31, keeping their BCS title hopes alive going into the final 2 weeks. However, Georgia faces 2 tough matchups. The Bulldogs head back home to play Alabama next week, and they finish off the season on the road at Texas. The defending champs will need to do all of this without their star quarterback Jaden Daniels, at least in the Alabama game. The latest reports have Daniels listed as highly questionable for the season finale against Texas with a dislocated elbow. It was a showdown of teams on the bubble in the BCS standings as the New Mexico Lobos paid a visit to the Alabama Crimson Tide, and it was the Tide with a huge win as they defeated the vaunted Lobo program by a final score of 47-42. Caleb Williams struggled for New Mexico, throwing for 193 yards and no touchdowns, while Alabama's Bo Nix completed 64% of his passes for nearly 300 yards in the win. Alabama also got big games their defense as Terrell Bernard and Jack Campbell combined for over 10 fantasy points. Alabama is now BCS eligible, and the Lobos find themselves in need of one more win, which won't be easy. The Lobos face a dangerous Maryland team next week and finish the season against the 2nd-ranked California Golden Bears. The New Mexico Lobos have an average rank of 2.8 over the past 5 seasons, so missing the BCS this year would be a shock, especially after they started the season with a 5-2 record. The Lobos have lost 2 straight games and need to get things on track against Maryland if they are to avoid a nail-biter in the final against Cal. Once again, your final in this one, Alabama 47-42 over New Mexico. The Lobos are now 6-5, and the Crimson Tide improved to 7-4. The top-ranked and undefeated Michigan Wolverines got more than they bargained for against Penn State, who led the game much of the way in Ann Arbor. Nittany Lion quarterback Bryce Young had a career day, throwing for 448 yards and 3 scores, which was good for over 16 fantasy points. Wolverine quarterback Jordan Love had an injury scare in the first half, but was able to return to finish the game, and the 11th win of the season for Michigan. The Wolverines will look to keep their perfect season going next week with a trip to San Diego to take on the 7-6 Aztecs. The program then faces Maryland on the road in the final game of the season. Again, your final, Michigan over Penn State 50-43. In our final game of Week 11, it was the Maryland Terrapins taking on the fledgling Ohio State Buckeyes in Columbus, and the outcome was never in doubt. Maryland kept their BCS hopes alive with an easy 34-23 victory behind a running game that produced over 15 fantasy points and 248 total yards and 4 touchdowns. Terrapin quarterback J.J. McCarthy struggled badly for Maryland, throwing for just 150 yards and 2 interceptions and barely cleared 0 fantasy points in spite of throwing 32 attempts. Ohio State is in a redshirt season, however, and never stood a chance, as the program is in rebuild mode and is basically a stepping stone for other teams on a weekly basis. The Terrapins still have a chance to earn BCS eligibility, but they face New Mexico and Michigan in the final 2 weeks of the season, which gives them a slim chance of avoiding the non-title bracket. If Maryland fails to qualify for the BCS, it would be the first time the program has failed to do so since Ben Johnson took over in 2021 when the Terps won the national title over Ohio State. Maryland came up just short of winning a 2nd straight national title the following year, narrowly losing to San Diego State in a controversial game that could have easily went their way.
This has been a Program Fantasy Football League scoreboard update. Week 12 begins with Thursday night football and promises to be an intriguing week with teams jockeying for BCS position.